Welcome, everyone, to Cannabis, a message for parents and caretakers of teens and young adults. This video is brought to you by the Blue Ridge Poison Center at University of Virginia Health. Across the country, cannabis laws are changing, and cannabis products are becoming more available. As a parent or caretaker of adolescents, you may have questions. How has cannabis changed in the past few decades? How do I know if my child is using cannabis? What are all the different forms of cannabis today, and is cannabis safe for adolescents? Here's a list of what we plan to accomplish in this video. First, to increase your knowledge and awareness about cannabis and cannabis products so that you feel more comfortable talking about it with the young people in your life. Next, we'll share 5 concerns about cannabis and children and adolescents. And last, who can you turn to if you need help? We'll let you know. Let's start with 3 fundamental terms that you need to know: cannabis, cannabinoid, and THC. Technically, Cannabis sativa, or just cannabis, is the name of a species of plant. You may be more familiar with the word marijuana, but marijuana has some historical negative stigma attached to it. Therefore, many people today have begun using the more neutral word cannabis to mean both the plant and all products made from it. Cannabis plants naturally contain hundreds of chemical compounds, including a special group called cannabinoids, which can attach to certain cells in our brain. Some of the cannabinoids are psychoactive compounds. This means they affect how the brain works and can cause changes in mood, awareness, thoughts, feelings, and behavior. The most well-known cannabinoid is delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, also called delta-9 THC, or often just THC for short. This is the chemical compound in cannabis which causes a high as well as other health effects. There are other cannabinoids in cannabis. Some are psychoactive, some are not. More about those later. Some people find the psychoactive effects of cannabis to be pleasurable, including a feeling of euphoria, which is often called being high, relaxation, more ease in social situations. Some people use cannabis for medical reasons, including relief from pain or from nausea. Cannabis can also cause some undesirable effects, such as trouble remembering things, difficulty thinking, concentrating, and problem solving, anxiety and paranoia, a racing heartbeat and increased blood pressure, and nausea and vomiting. Cannabis can also impair your balance, coordination, and reaction time. This can make driving a car dangerous. In fact, it's illegal to drive a car under the influence of cannabis. Cannabis does not always cause the same health effects for everybody every time. People may experience differences depending on how much cannabis they consume, how potent or strong it is, meaning how much THC is in it, other drugs or chemicals that might be mixed in with it, a person's existing medical condition, including their existing mental health condition, and a person's own experience with cannabis. How people use cannabis depends on what type of product it is. There are 2 main types: dried plant material and cannabis concentrates. Dried parts of the plant can be smoked, either rolled into a cigarette, which is commonly called a joint, in a handheld pipe, or in a device called a bong, which filters the smoke through water to make it less harsh in the lungs. There are also special vaping devices which can aerosolize dried cannabis plant material, commonly called herb vapes, Many of these devices look like external hard drives or other electronic equipment and are easy to conceal. Today, cannabis concentrates are growing in popularity and availability. Concentrates are made by extracting the THC from the cannabis plant and then concentrating it into other substances. Cannabis concentrates take a wide variety of forms. They can be creamy, waxy, oily, hard and brittle, or dry and grainy. But they all have one thing in common: they are highly potent, meaning they are very strong. They contain a lot of THC. Some of the most common nicknames for these products include butter, shatter, wax, keef, rosin, hashish or hash, and butane hash oil, also called BHO. Some extraction methods are mechanical, involving heat, friction, ice, or pressure. Others involve using solvents, such as butane, propane, or ethanol. Unfortunately, solvent residues can remain in the finished product if not manufactured properly. This is common in unregulated cannabis concentrates. More about this later. There are many ways to consume cannabis concentrates depending on what form they take. Some, like hashish, which is a resin extracted from the buds of a female cannabis plant, may be smoked in a joint, pipe, or bong. Some products are vaped. Vaping devices are easy to conceal, and there's little to no odor. Many contain artificial flavoring chemicals, making these products more attractive to children and to teens. Some products are consumed with a special pipe called a dab rig or an oil rig, which looks similar to a bong but uses very high heat to vaporize tiny amounts of sticky or brittle cannabis concentrate. Little to no smoke or odor is created. The process is called dabbing. Some dab rigs require the use of a handheld butane torch in order to heat the cannabis to a high enough temperature that it vaporizes. Some dab rigs are electric. They may be called e-rigs. There are also handheld devices called dab pens or dab pipes. Some concentrates are infused into alcohol or oils to make tinctures, which are then placed under the tongue or added to foods and drinks. Some concentrates are added to skin creams or balms. Lastly, some concentrates can be added to foods like baked goods, candies, lozenges, gummies, and even drinks. These are called edibles. Here are 5 things that parents and caretakers of adolescents need to know about cannabis today. First, the potency of cannabis is increasing. There's a real lack of regulation, which is problematic. Edibles present special risks. Cannabis affects adolescents differently than adults. And there are legal concerns for adolescents who use cannabis. Let's look at each of these 5 concerns more closely. Thanks to selective breeding, today's cannabis sativa plants have more than 3 times the concentration of THC than 25 years ago. In the 1970s and 80s, the average potency was around 2% to 4%. Today, the average potency is 15% or sometimes even more. Cannabis concentrates are extremely potent. Some of these products contain as much as 50 to 90% THC. That is an amount way higher than found in nature. Higher potency in cannabis is linked to stronger, more harmful side effects, including nausea and vomiting, anxiety and paranoia, a racing heartbeat, hallucinations, delusions, and other mental health problems. In fact, as the potency of cannabis has risen, the number of people going to an emergency department or calling the poison center after using cannabis is also rising. Unless you buy from a government-licensed cannabis dispensary, the products for sale online or in stores are unregulated. Currently in Virginia, the only government-licensed dispensaries are medical cannabis dispensaries, and you need a prescription to use them. Unregulated means that there is no oversight about how the cannabis is grown, manufactured, tested, labeled, or packaged. When tested by independent labs, many unregulated products are found to have much higher or lower concentrations of THC than what is listed on the label. Many are also found to be contaminated with solvents, acids, heavy metals, mold, insecticides, or other chemicals which are harmful to breathe, eat, or drink. And don't be fooled by QR codes on packages which link to legitimate-looking lab results. Many of these have been found to be completely fake. Eating or drinking edibles causes the same effects as smoking or vaping, but the effects are often delayed by up to 2 hours, and they last much longer. Also, edibles can be very potent, and the dosing is tricky. One edible might contain several times the recommended dose of THC. All of this can lead users to accidentally consume a lot more of the drug than they intended. Here's an example. This chocolate bar edible contains 12 squares, each of which contains 83 milligrams of THC. That's a pretty high dose for most people. Novice cannabis users are advised to start at about 5 milligrams or even less. This entire package contains almost 1,000 milligrams of THC. Here's another problem with edibles. They look just like regular food, candy, or drinks. The packaging might even be misleading, particularly in unregulated products. This makes them very attractive to children who cannot tell the difference. Young children who get into edibles can experience slow or shallow breathing, slow heart rate, hallucinations, problems moving or speaking, and more. Young children who get into cannabis often need to be hospitalized because their symptoms are so severe. This chart shows that calls to poison centers across the country about kids who got into edibles has been sharply rising. Adults who use cannabis edibles must take extra steps to store them up and away, out of sight and reach. We also suggest using certified child-resistant containers, which means the container is difficult for children to open and is opaque so they can't see what's inside. Remember, some children can eventually figure out how to open child-resistant containers, so it's a good idea to also use a lock. Also, avoid using cannabis in front of young children. Cannabis affects children and adolescents differently than adults. Why? Because the brain is still growing and developing until our mid-20s. Using a drug like cannabis while the brain is still growing changes how the brain develops. In particular, how it builds connections for important functions like attention, memory, and learning. And these changes are permanent. This can lead to all sorts of problems later in life, including higher risks of depression, thoughts of suicide, and other mental health problems, higher risks of a substance use disorder later in life, memory problems, and problems with learning, attention, and concentration. Because of this, teens who use cannabis regularly are more likely to have problems in school, make lower grades, and are less likely to graduate. Our final concern: it's illegal for anyone under age 21 to possess or use cannabis. And across the country, cannabis remains an illegal substance at the federal level. Users might test positive for THC on a drug screen, which could have consequences at school or work or make it difficult to get or keep a job or join the military. Users could be arrested and charged with a crime. And remember, driving under the influence of cannabis is also a crime, which could result in losing a driver's license, fines, or even jail. Now we're going to take some time to answer some other frequently asked questions, including, what are hemp-derived THC products such as Delta-8? Are they safe? Is synthetic cannabis real cannabis? Is cannabis addictive? How do I know if my child is using cannabis, and how can I talk to them about it? What do I say? You may have seen products claiming to contain hemp-derived THC. What does that mean? Well, first, let's talk about hemp. Hemp is a cultivar of Cannabis sativa. Both cannabis and hemp plants look identical to the naked eye, and both contain many different cannabinoids. But chemically, there is one very notable difference. Cannabis contains more than 0.3% delta-9 THC, usually quite a bit more, whereas hemp only contains 0.3% delta-9 THC or less. Therefore, cannabis is psychoactive, but hemp is not. In other words, smoking, vaping, or eating hemp in its natural state cannot get you high. Hemp became legal to farm in 2018 and is used to make many products including rope, animal feed, textiles, and more. Once it became legal, chemistry experts realized they could isolate, extract, and concentrate its cannabinoids. Since delta-9 THC is a controlled substance, they couldn't legally extract and then sell that. But hemp contains other cannabinoids too, which are not illegal. One example is cannabidiol, also called CBD. CBD is not psychoactive. In other words, it does not make you high. CBD may have some health benefits, including relief from pain, anxiety, and trouble sleeping. But the evidence is limited, and more studies are needed. Other cannabinoids in hemp include some which are almost identical in their chemical structure to delta-9 THC. Names for these cannabinoids include delta-8 THC, delta-10 THC, delta-0 THC, etc. These forms of THC are psychoactive, but the amount contained in the hemp plant is so tiny. The only way to experience any health effects is to chemically extract and then concentrate them. Delta-8 and other hemp-derived THC compounds are typically added to liquid vape cartridges or sprayed onto dried, shredded plant material and then smoked or made into edibles, particularly candy. For a while, these products existed in a sort of legal loophole. Today, several states, including Virginia, have banned products containing hemp-derived THC, such as delta-8. Nevertheless, they remain available for purchase in some stores and online. So what is the problem with hemp-derived products? Well, while many people are aware that delta-8 THC will get them high, some are not, and this can catch them by surprise. People may also not realize that using delta-8 THC would cause them to test positive for THC on a drug screen. Just like with any other unregulated cannabis, products are often contaminated. Inaccurate labeling is very common, and since these products are never tested, many users have reported strong, unwanted side effects. What is synthetic cannabis? Some illicit drug makers figured out how to extract cannabinoids from the plant and then change the chemical structure slightly to make new compounds which mimic the effects of cannabis. These new compounds are considered synthetic cannabis because they are human-made and don't exist in nature. Common names include Scooby Snacks, K2, Spice, and more. Packages are often labeled as potpourri or herbal incense in order to avoid regulation. The chemicals are added to liquid vape cartridges or sprayed onto paper or dried, shredded plant material and then smoked. These products can be found in stores and online, so people assume that they are legal and safe. They are not. Using synthetic products is associated with severe, potentially life-threatening health effects. Some people have even died after using synthetic cannabis products. Is cannabis addictive? The answer is yes, for some people. According to the US CDC, approximately 3 out of every 10 people who use cannabis regularly have an addiction to it, also called cannabis use disorder. This means that they are unable to stop using cannabis even though it's causing health and social problems in their lives. There are many complex reasons why some users will develop cannabis use disorder and some will not. But a person's chances are much higher if they start using cannabis during adolescence when the brain is still growing. How can you know if your child is using cannabis? Well, this is difficult because many signs of drug use in teens are typical behavior for teens. Some could be signs of other mental health issues, including depression or anxiety. But in general, here are some things to look out for. Changes in mood or personality, a lack of motivation or interest in activities that used to engage them, like sports or school, becoming secretive, changes in their personal relationships, a sudden change in hygiene habits, a smell of smoke or other unexplainable odors, changes in their physical health. The eyes might be red and heavy-lidded, and there may be cannabis paraphernalia in their rooms or among their personal belongings. Speaking of paraphernalia, note that many items for vaping, both nicotine and cannabis, are designed to look like regular, everyday items, such as key fobs, USB drives, school supplies, and even clothing, like this hoodie, whose drawstring is actually a vaping device. Parents are a powerful influence in their children's lives. It is more important than ever for parents and caregivers to protect adolescents by talking with them about the risks of using cannabis while their brains are still developing. If you feel like you need guidance or ideas to do this, you aren't alone. We have included some resources in our Parent and Caregiver Toolkit to guide you. The kit contains this video, flyers, a poster, a glossary of terms, a virtual Kahoot game, links to classroom activities, and a list of resources to support parents and teachers in their conversations with adolescents about cannabis. These resources were produced by pediatricians and experts in adolescent behavior and psychology. They offer great tips for getting the conversation started, suggestions for what to say, and advice for keeping the communication flowing and productive. To find the toolkit, visit our website at www.brpc.virginia.edu, then choose Learn More from the menu. You can also Google Blue Ridge Poison Center to find our website that way. In summary, the THC in cannabis causes effects on your mind and body. Some of these effects may be desirable, some are not. The harmful effects of using cannabis before your mid-20s, including problems with memory, learning, and mental health, can be permanent. Unregulated products may be mislabeled, too strong, contaminated, and dangerous. And lastly, there are some legal concerns for teens who use cannabis. If you're worried that you or someone you know has a problem with cannabis or any drug, take action. Talk to your healthcare provider. There are treatment options that are proven to work. If you need help finding a healthcare provider who treats substance use disorders, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or SAMHSA, operates a national helpline at 1-800-662-4357 or 1-800-662-HELP. This free and confidential service is available in English and Spanish. If someone is experiencing serious health problems after using a cannabis product, or if a child got into any amount of cannabis at all, call the Blue Ridge Poison Center right away for immediate, confidential emergency medical advice. Our help is free and available 24/7. Scan this code with your smartphone to save the Poison Helpline into the phone. Thank you.